Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's event. We are going to talk about how you can use Edulastic for ELA instruction. And this webinar is a part of our Fall Teacher Talk webinar series that centers around teachers sharing their experiences and tips for using digital assessment. This particular webinar is focusing on ELA, and I will be your host today. My name is Ileana Betancourt, and I work here at Edulastic. And for 6 years, my job has been to help connect educators to great resources. And so I'm excited to be here today with you to share with you how Edulastic can help you as an English teacher. I'm joined in this room right now by two of my colleagues. One of them, John Chen, who is our customer success manager, is on the line to answer any technical Edulastic questions that people might have. And my colleague, Leslie Tyler, who's right over here next to me. She is the VP of Marketing and Partnerships here at Edulastic, so we're all here in the room excited to share with you. And we also have two really great featured presenters today, who I'm also excited are here to join us today. Christina is the 6th grade ELA teacher at Hudson Charter School, and next year is going to be her 10th year teaching. This is her 2nd year working here at this charter school, and before she was working down in Texas. Right now she is tuning in from New Jersey. And Karen Ford is an 8th grade English teacher in Franklin, Massachusetts, and it's her 6th year of teaching. Before that, she was a social worker for adolescents, so she's worked with students or youth in a lot of different ways. She has one-to-one Google Chromebooks and is passionate about using technology in the classroom. And we're excited to have them both here today as we talk about Edulastic, and they have some really great insights and stories from their experiences that they're going to share with us today. So I want to go over a few things with Edulastic first. So, we have a poll actually. Actually, a couple things. Let me back up a little bit. A couple housekeeping items. One is that we have a wonderful feature in this webinar called the chat. If you've been on a webinar before, maybe you've used it. If not, please direct your attention to the little speech bubble that you'll find. I think it'll be at the bottom of the window or to the right side. If you click on that, it'll open up a chat where you can chime in. So why don't we find out who's in the audience today and go ahead and enter where you're tuning in from and how about just where you're tuning in from. We'll start with something simple. Let's see if I can enter too.
Mexico.
So I'm going to look over here at my colleague's screen. We have Fort Myers, Florida, Mexico, Grants Pass, Oregon, Cincinnati, Ohio, Metamora, Ohio, Washington State, Arizona. Nice. We're chiming in here from Fremont, California. Gardens Grove, California. Hello, fellow Californian. Excellent. Okay, cool. And then we also want to learn a little bit more from everyone in the audience. Leslie, can you start? There's a poll. Okay, thank you. And so this poll is going to ask you how familiar you are with Edulastic. We want to make this event as relevant as possible to you. So just go ahead and fill that out. We're also asking if you have to prepare for a state test of some sort in the spring. If you teach elementary school, middle school, high school, or something else. Is there anything else on that poll? I'm trying to look over at it. Nope. All right, just to get an idea of who's in the crowd. And for anyone who's enjoying using that chat, we'd also like to hear what you're looking forward to learning about today. Because again, we want to make sure that this is valuable to you, and we also want this to be somewhat conversational. So throughout today's presentation, please go ahead and ask questions in the chat. If we can't get to them right away, we'll definitely address them at the end of the presentation, where we will have more formal time for question and discussion. So let's see what we're seeing over here. Oh, great. It looks like there have been a lot of people who've assigned an assessment. We have a variety of people who are, can you scroll up a little? Using Park, SBAC, AIR, or some other type of assessments. Easy Merit. Okay. Okay, great. A variety of people who are using the teacher free account, some who are on a enterprise version. We're going to cover throughout the presentation. You'll see some of the great features of both. And oh yeah, even split between elementary school, middle school, and high school. Great. Sounds like we have a great diversity of people here. And again, feel free to chime in at any point. We want this to be as valuable as possible for you. So I'm going to go over a couple features in Edulastic, and then we'll hand it over to our featured speakers. So Edulastic has a number of technology-enhanced items that you can find when you're looking to create an assessment. There's multiple choice, multiple selection, text dropdown, essay type, text entry, true or false. These are some of the classic questions that you'll find on any assessment. And then there are some ELA-specific technology-enhanced items. So if you want to include some sort of passage, poem, some text for students to look at and analyze, the passage-based question is a very useful one and pretty popular. There's also sentence response, which allows students to click on a different sentence as an answer. There's editing task. Drag and drop is always a favorite. Classification, resequence, multi-part, match the following. I looked into our database to see what are the most popular question types for ELA, and multiple choice is one of the most common ones. And that's kind of across the board for all subjects. We see that. Then there's essay, multiple selection, text drop down, drag and drop, and sentence response is pretty well used. I think what's important about this slide is that it shows if you are someone who's just starting out or you're still getting into the flow of using digital assessment, you can start simple. Start with a couple of the easier question types to use and go from there. You don't want to overwhelm yourself, and there are a lot of options and opportunities to add and embellish on your assessments. So you can move forward towards those once you get comfortable with the basics. And then when you're going into the Edulastic assessment library and creating an assessment, you'll find tons of questions that you can pull from. So this is really helpful when you are looking to create a test and want something to work from. You can filter and sort on the side by grade, subjects. Right now we're looking at ELA Common Core. You can look for particular standards. You can also look in different collections. So if other teachers in your district or school are using Edulastic, you can search to see what other teachers might have shared within your school or within your district. There's also Edulastic certified questions and assessments that allow you to access content that has been vetted by us. So you can know for sure that it's good quality content. And then you can look for different question types. So if you want sentence response questions, if you want passage-based questions, you can specifically search for those types with this filter. Oops. And then you can choose from a wide selection of ELA standards. So here I took screenshots of the drop-down menu for what you can search for in ELA. As you can see, you can get really specific depending on what state you're in. If you're in a state and you need your standards added here, uploaded, please let us know. You can send them to us through support@edulastic.com, and we'll be happy to work with you. The nice thing about this is that you can really dig down into particular standards and make sure that you cover all the topics that you want students to master. And now I'm going to pass it off to Christina. So Christina, you can go ahead. I don't know if the screen is already being shared or if your audio is on or off.
Audio's on.
Okay, great. Sounds good. I'm going to mute myself and just let me know when you want me to go from one slide to the next.
Sure, thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Christina Acevedo. I'm currently a 6th grade ELA teacher at Hudson Arts and Science Charter School in Kearney, New Jersey, and my Twitter name is @teachacevedo. I mostly share Edulastic stuff on there, as well as some cool tips and tricks that I find. You can go to the next one. So I'm really excited to be with everybody today because I would like to share something really cool that I think we do at our school. And what we do is we are actually using Edulastic to do bi-weekly skills checks to help us inform our guided reading groups and instruction. So today I'm just going to share a little bit about how we do the skills checks, what they are, and how we form our guided reading groups based on the data that we receive from those skills checks. Next slide, please. So before I go into how we use this skills check, I thought it was really important to go over exactly what a skills check is. So for us, a skills check is a short, standards-focused assessment, and what we really try to do is focus on quality instead of quantity of questions. So we pick 4 to 6 standard-focused questions that are passage-based. And most of the time they are in the Part A, Part B style, and we kind of use a bunch of different formats. So we do have multiple choice, but we also use multiple select, drag and drop, and highlighting the answers within the text, which is that sentence response type under the tech enhanced items. And usually a biweekly skills check should take no more than about 15 to 20 minutes. Next slide, please. Thank you. So what I did was I took a screenshot of one of the skills checks that we had actually used in our 6th grade. So this is our skill check number 2, and we were testing RL 6.3. So this is what a Part A question would look like for one of our skills checks. So the directions are at the top. Read the passage below and answer the question that follow. The passage is Stargirl. And then on the right-hand side, they have a multiple choice Part A question, which is focusing on the standard. And then for the Part B question, again, the passage is still there on the left-hand side, and the question is asking them to support their answer with evidence from the text. And this one's actually a multiple select, so they have to pick more than one quote from the text to support their response in Part A. Next slide, please. Thank you. So how are those biweekly skills checks created? So across all of our schools, which we call across our districts, we actually meet in PLCs, and all of the teachers within that grade level, or most of the teachers in that grade level, will actually meet in a PLC. We will sit down together and pool our resources, creating the biweekly skill check together, discussing the skill check, making sure that it's appropriate for our students, that it's actually testing the standard, and then reviewing the skill check thoroughly before we give it. One teacher then takes on the responsibility of typing and then sharing the biweekly skill check with all the other teachers across the schools. And then each teacher themselves will then assign the test to their own students. And the teacher is also responsible for sharing that skill check with the special education teacher, who can then modify it as needed. And then after the skills check, we sometimes will meet, debrief, and discuss the skills check. For example, in one of our skills checks, we found that on one of our questions, we had used the word boisterous, and many of our students kind of gave us feedback that they weren't really sure what that word actually meant. So they found that question particularly hard. And when we had talked about it in our PLC, all the teachers had all kind of given that same feedback, like, yeah, our students were really unsure about that one specific word. So I think it's really important that after a skills check, you also meet with your team to get feedback from them, and just make sure that, you know, the biweekly skills checks are going smoothly. If there's anything that you can do to improve or change, you're always constantly working together to make sure that those things happen. Next slide, please. So what I tried to do was just kind of make a visual for everybody about how the biweekly skill check works. So first and foremost, we have to teach the standard and the skills that we are going to be teaching our students. So we have to teach those skills and standards. Then after we're done teaching those, we conduct the biweekly skills check. After we conduct the biweekly skills check, we analyze the data. Then we use that data along with data from running and retelling records to form guided reading groups. Then we conduct the guided reading in those groups that we created. And then as we are conducting those guided reading groups, we are also going back to teaching the standards and skills that we continuously are teaching as the year progresses. Next slide, please. So once you give the skills check, the students will log into their computer, they'll go onto Edulastic, they'll take this skills check. You'll be presented with lots and lots of data. So the absolutely wonderful thing about the data that you get on Edulastic is that it's 100% real time and it's really, really visual. So you can instantly review how your students did, and your students can also instantly review how they did, which I think is really awesome. And then looking at the data that is compiled from here, from the students from this assessment that they took, I can now form my guided reading groups. So as you can see in my groups here, I do have some students who have completely mastered the standard. I have some students who have partially mastered the standard, and I have some students who have shown that they maybe have not mastered the standard or that they need additional practice with the standard. So using this data plus the data that I have gotten in class, like informally observing my students and working with them, as well as their running records and their retelling record data, I can now put my groups together. Next slide, please. So it was kind of hard to see in the last slide, but looking at all of the different pieces of data, I've now sat and looked at, per se, like how many questions each student had gotten right or had gotten wrong. And so, for example, this student right here, whose name is Blue Donut, had gotten no questions correct, or had only gotten one question correct. And so for me, I feel like that student really needs to be in a more like one-on-one guided reading group for that particular skill, because they need a little bit more focus on it. And then moving across the table, you have your students who got 2 questions right, so I put them in a group together, 3 questions right, and then 4 questions right. And depending on how many groups you can meet with during the week, you can potentially split your groups a little bit more. So like, for example, there are 6 students in this group 4 right here. You could potentially split that into 2 groups depending on how many groups a week during the week that you can meet with. And then for my students who got 5 or even 6 questions correct, showing that they basically have mostly mastered or have mastered that skill, we would provide them with an extension activity, or they can start working in literature circles to help further develop the skills that they have already learned and extend them to like novel-based activities. Next slide, please. So just a couple of keys to grouping, and that like I think are really important to remember when you are creating your guided reading groups, and that you are using for the biweekly skills check. There has to be a high level of flexibility in your groups, because each time you do a skills check, your groups are going to fluctuate. So you may have certain students who stay in similar groups, but as you're teaching new skills and your skills checks change, you may have students who master one skill but don't necessarily master the other. So your groups need to be flexible in order to be able to continuously change, excuse me. The student should not be stuck in a specific group. So for example, student A should not be in group 1 for the entire school year. They should be able to move based on their mastery of each skill. Also, something else that I think is important to keep in mind is that you should be including some type of additional data other than the skills check. So yes, I do use this skills check to help me form the group, but there are other things that you can use. For example, vocabulary quizzes or any other types of quizzes you give the students. I also check their running record level. So in our district, we use Fountas and Pinnell A to Z reading levels. Now I teach 6th grade, so a lot of my students are on level Z, but even, I just think it's important to just make sure that you continuously have that kind of like in the back of your mind as you're forming those groups, because I think that's just a really important point to keep in mind. So thank you everybody for joining my section of the webinar. I really hope that you consider potentially giving the biweekly skills check, or just thinking about using Edulastic in general, because it is a really awesome tool to have in the classroom. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Christina. That was awesome. And if anybody wants to learn more, she wrote this wonderful blog post about using biweekly checks to inform reading, which I'm going to post right now in the chat so you can access that. If anyone has any immediate questions, also right now would be a great time if you want to ask them. I know we have some people tuning in on Facebook too, so if you're asking questions there, we can see the chat. And if there aren't any questions right now, and you have one at some point later, we can address them later at the end of the presentation today. I do have a quick question. Where do you get the assessments and the questions that you use? Do you write them or do you find them online?
When we kind of pool all of our resources, so depending on what we're testing them on, so like for each standard, sometimes we find them in different places, sometimes we write them ourselves, so it really just kind of depends on the standard and what we're testing them for.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. All right, I'm going to, oh, we have another question that just came through from Michelle. Are the questions based on a book that you're currently reading?
Usually no. We usually give them a short passage that we want to have them read while they're doing the skills check, because we want them to be able to kind of look at that passage or look at the text that they're reading and be able to apply the skill right there with that specific passage.
Okay, great. Then we have another one from Dorothy. How many questions that address a specific standard are assigned to each passage?
So we usually use one passage, and depending, right, like for the majority of our skills checks, we're looking at one standard. So depending on the standard, it could be all 4 questions or all 6 questions are focused on that one standard. I did have one skills check that was 6 questions and it was focused on 2 standards. So we just tried to split it as best as we could, like 3 and 3. But we really try to focus that skills check on one of the standards just so we can really see if the student has mastered that specific standard.
I have another question. So when you're creating these skills checks, are you, I guess, how do you distribute the work? Are you working, or how many teachers are you working with on this? And do you each make the questions in Edulastic, or like what are your strategies for sharing the content and questions and working together?
Sure. So typically there's between 4 and 5 teachers working on the skills check at the same time. And sometimes it kind of depends on the week, but most of the time, at least 2 or 3 teachers work on the skills check at one point. But before the skills check is actually published and like sent out to all of us, we all sit down together and look at it and review the skills check just to make sure that everybody's like input is put in, and that if somebody wants to add anything, or if they feel like there's like the wording of it isn't necessarily the way that it should be, or if something needs to be changed, that we've all had eyes on it. We've all kind of looked at it and reviewed it to make sure that it's what is going to help us best assess that standard.
Okay, great. Oh, and it looks like Dorothy has a follow-up question. Would the skill check only contain one passage?
So up to this point, the skills checks only had one passage, but if you have a standard that where they have to compare and contrast the passages, then you would have to give them more than one.
Okay. Great questions, everyone. Thanks for sharing. Keep them coming if you have more. We'll move along to our next featured presenter. Thank you, Christina. And there'll be more time for questions at the end. Okay. All right, so Karen, you're up next.
Right. Can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Hi, so I'm Karen Ford, and I am from Hopkinton, Massachusetts. I teach in Franklin, Massachusetts.
Oh, okay.
It says the host has asked you to start your video. Do I do that?
Yes, please.
Okay, did it.
Excellent. We can see you.
Hi, Miriam. So, and you can follow me on Twitter, but mostly I just tweet pictures of the kids learning. So it's for fun if you'd like that. I guess we could go to the next slide. So one of the things that, so this is actually a picture of my kids taking a warm up. I use Edulastics as warm ups very, very frequently. And we do 4 novels in the 8th grade. You can see we're starting with the Pearl. And one of the things that I'd like to do is assess the kids' comprehension of the reading, and, you know, whether or not they read. So I use warm-ups to assess for whether or not the completion of the homework and the comprehension of the text. And that way, I can see right away as they're entering the class, you know, within the first 10 minutes of class or so, what they understand, what they don't understand, and where I need to sort of focus the discussion of the day. And I think I have a, I think this might be a link. Is it?
Do you want us to go there, or do you want to take us there?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm not sure which one that is, but I think it was, I think it was a good one.
Let me click on it and find out.
Can we get in there? Oh, look, Ernest Hemingway's here.
Yeah, in the house. What is my password?
And I know we talked about sharing the screen. Oh,
Okay, so you can go ahead and share your screen. Do you have, yeah, that might be the best way to go about this.
okay. Let's see what comes up.
Okay.
All right, and it would be here, but then how do I get to?
You want to get to that link? I can share the link with you in the chat.
Oh, wait, here I am. Okay.
Great, so we can see your screen now.
Okay, hold on, get back. Go here. Sorry, it's a mess over here.
No worries.
I'm almost there. Here
Awesome.
we go. I had it all set before. Can anybody see this?
Yes, we can see your screen. Do you want to make it fill the screen?
Yeah. And then can you see that, like the people at the top too, or is that?
We can see you at the top, and we can
Okay.
see everything on your screen that you can see right now.
Okay. So in my Edulastics, like for example, I had them read, where are we? Let's do, so for symbolism, characterization, and plot structure, I'm going to put it on present. What I had them do, you can see, I can see them working. One of the things that that Christina also mentioned, I can see them working while they're working. So what I'll do is I'll have them start off the class, and I'll sit behind my desk and just watch what they're doing on the screen, and they know I'm watching them. And then I can see, if I see somebody kind of coming up with like a lot of reds in a row, I'll look and see, you know, what's going on, what's going wrong. And that will be maybe something that we address later on. But I also then go over the results with the students. So I would, you know, bring the screen up in front of my class. So after they're done, so I want them to understand what's the plot structure elements and the way they appear in narratives. And then I'll have, you know, a kid come up and go through. So at the same time that they're reviewing the content, they're also reviewing their test taking strategies. So in this particular poem, they needed to identify a symbol, and then they need to figure out direct characterization or indirect characterization. And one of the things that I love it for the drag and drop values, I've been using it a lot with the vocabulary reviews. So particularly for parts of speech in the 8th grade, we're really kind of where they should probably have this by now, but it's for some reason a conundrum for them. And so I'll have them I'll, you know, do the definitions and have them apply the knowledge, but then I also want them to identify the parts of speech. And this is a good way to do it with the drag and drop values. I love that question feature. And then I have them do, I want them to do a complete sentence and an explanation, and then I can go back in with their reading, and as they're doing it, I can see what they're writing and what their comprehension is. And then, just some basic identification questions. So probably in my class, I think we can go back to the slides. Can I unshare my screen? How do I do that? Are we there?
Yeah. Hey, Karen. This is Leslie. Yeah, I think if I go ahead and share Ileana's screen, that will work. Hold on, continue, and let me do this one, and then share screen. Okay, great. Yes, we're back in business. Hooray! Okay.
There we go.
Yeah.
So then we'll do, the review the Edulastic as a whole group discussion, and then. So I tell them like every single day, they probably get wicked aggravated by it. Sorry, I am from Boston. That we're working on not just the content here, but we're also working on test taking skills, because that's one of the big things where I find students sort of falling apart in their test taking skills. We have the MCAS in Massachusetts. And a lot of times when they leave the test, they'll be like, oh, wait, I forgot to look at all the questions. So the more they practice with questions that look just like what's going to be on their sort of big assessments, the more comfortable they'll feel, and they're not going to sort of rush through. So I will do a lot of, if I'm doing the multiple choice, I'll do a lot of the all of the above or none of the above, which are, obviously not good test taking strategies to go directly there. I want them to be, I want to sort of hammer it home. You're going through every single question and process of elimination. So sometimes I'll put the correct answer on top, but I'll demonstrate, wait, we don't stop there. Let's go through the rest of the questions and why or why not, and what's a best fit answer. Okay, I think we can go to the next slide. All right, so it's a real quick opportunity. So in this Pearl background knowledge quick quiz, I can see immediately that, it's wicked glitchy, that pink flame is in need of further instruction. So what I can do is, if you see the redirect on here, I can, wait until kind of after the class and talk to Pink Flame and say, what's going on. For this particular one, this was one that could wait. And then I can redirect it and we can go through it together. So it's not just done and done. We can continue with the learning process. For, reinforcing skills or, making sure that the comprehension of content is there for the students. And this actually is legitimately, I took a picture of my screen while it was in process. Okay. One of the assessment features that I really love is, for a summative assessment, is the rubrics. You can give the students, what I did was I put in, we have the MCAS narrative scoring rubric. So actually I'm not the author of it, but it just had looked for an author. So I put in the actual MCAS narrative scoring rubric and all of the standards that are addressed. And then as I was going through, and it's really quick and easy, it's, for the kids, big writing projects, I use Gubrick through, I don't know if anybody else does this, through Google not Google Classroom, but through Google. And I find I find the Edulastic rubrics easier to grade. Are you there? Oh, in the premium version. I know. So that's actually kind of a plug for the premium version. I really do like that, being able to put the rubric in and then assess it, because it just comes up on the side and you can see the points come up and you can give feedback to the students and they get it back in a similar way to the rubric.
I just wanted to mention it so that we would be clear on what was free and what was premium.
Thank you. Sorry. Sometimes I don't know because it just magically shows up for me. Okay.
Oh, hey, Karen, we also launched a very new feature where students can see the rubric now too.
Oh,
yeah. That
will be even better, actually. Yeah. So that's good to know. I love that, because then they know what they're writing for. And they don't when they're on the MCAS, but if they're practicing with the end in mind, then they are better writers. Okay, I think we can go to the next. So I find Edulastic super easy to use. I think the questions, it makes sure that they're standards based. Sometimes, I just want a quick identification question if I'm just doing a quick comp check, but it helps remind me, like if I'm struggling to find where I'm going to plug this into a standard, then I'm like, well, that's probably not even a standards based question. And then I get rid of it and start again. There are already generated questions that you can modify. I love creating the questions on my own. And the first year, so 2 years ago, I started using this. And the first year that I started using this, I use the little help button all the time. And the videos are great. They're 2 minutes, and I was slow, so I would have to do it again and again. But I eventually got it, because I would forget from time to time, which was the one that was the drag and drop, or the sentence, a highlighter, or whatever. But by now I have a decent library that I can edit from year to year, which has been super helpful for me. You touch on different things in class, and so I want to make sure that I'm up to date on the new standards, but also that students are being assessed on what they're learning in class. I love watching all the students complete and getting the immediate data, and I love the interface with Google Classroom. I know Christina touched on this in terms of modifying for her students who have who are in the special education department. I actually have a sort of classroom that the kids don't know about. This is kind of like all behind the scenes, but I created a classroom for the students who are, getting modifications, and then I can just push those assignments out to them through Google Classroom. You can differentiate in Google Classroom which student gets which assignment, and it's a completely blind process to the students, but it's giving each student the modifications and the differentiation that they need. And also, I can look up on the class, like if there are students that aren't doing their homework, and they're well, how come I don't get it? And then they're seeing a dip in their grade, but they might be thinking, oh, that's okay, nobody got it. But then if I put the whole screen up, then this is what you need to do. And typically, though, when I see the students who are not achieving the scores that I'm looking for, it's because they didn't do the work that's required of them, or they need shoring up on some of their skills. So it's more of a convincer for the 8th grade mind. It's more of a with a crowd mentality. It's more of a convincer, like, oh, okay, I should probably do something about this. And it's a privacy screen, so they're not comparing anybody that they know. They're comparing Red Dragon to Blue Flame. They don't know who it is. They're just thinking, oh, okay, and they're figuring out what they need to be doing. And I think, do I have another? I think I have another. Can we go to the next one? And then, like I mentioned, with the test taking skills, I think I know I personally don't like to spend a lot of time specifically on test taking skills, but they need test taking skills, regardless of how you feel about these, the MCAS or any SATs or whatever. One of the things that they measure is how well you take tests. And we don't really, because we're more standards driven and we're trying to teach content, then we don't go through that as much as thoroughly, in school. So I think just kind of reinforcing that with the content that you're supposed to be teaching is helpful for the students. You know, when we talked sort of informally after the MCAS last year, I asked them, you know, what were some things that helped, what didn't help. I gave them a little, you know, sort of informal poll. They did say that the Edulastic style helped, and remembering to do the process of elimination and, you know, choosing the best fit answer. I think we can go to the next. And I think that's it. I think that was it. So.
All right, great. Thank you, Karen. Anybody have any questions for Karen? I liked how you went into some of those specific tools that you're using and how that helps you. And that's definitely true. Test taking isn't always a favorite, but sometimes it's something that is just an important skill to have. And with practice, especially practice that looks like that assessment, whether it's PARCC, SBAC, or a state test, that can be really valuable when it comes to the test day. So I asked in the chat, is anyone here a Google Classroom user?
Am I the only one?
That would be very surprising. Okay.
Yeah.
Looks like Susanna is, Michelle. Because I want to make sure if anyone here wants to see how the two work together, I can show you that. Again, if anyone has any questions for what Karen just said, go ahead and share that. We are going to open up the floor to questions overall. I did want to show some of the specific ELA questions in action too. So maybe I'll go ahead and do that. Let's see. What is on Edulastic roadmap in terms of new features? Lots of great things. Do we disclose that? Okay. We'll get back to that one in a moment. 1 second. I am going to pull up, let's see, go back here and share a different part of my screen. Escape. So I do want to show how some of those TEIs that we talked about worked, I think. Hold on a second. I know Karen showed some of the questions earlier. I just want to show the sentence selection one because that one's a pretty cool one. And recently some people were asking about it on Twitter. Here we go. Okay, so we're going to preview this one. Preview. Oh, actually, it's by you, Suzanne. That's funny. Or what a coincidence. Thanks for sharing your assessment publicly. Okay, so for this one, you can see it's a passage-based question, and students can open it up so they can see the entire question here, or slide it over so they can read the passage. And to respond to that, they can, yeah. Suzanne says no. It's so funny that you're sharing an assessment I wrote. Yeah, the moment that I saw your question and then went to the one that I was going to share, I noticed that the name was the same. Okay, so this is the sentence response Suzanne has used inside this one. So you can click on sentences that you want to highlight. This one is asking you to identify the author's claim by clicking on the correctly highlighted sentence. So if we think that the author's claim is that it's everyone's problem and everyone needs to take a stand and wipe it out, then we'll click on that. With passage-based, you can also use multiple choice. Yeah, but the sentence response is pretty cool. So I just wanted to show you how that worked. And then if you go to the, let's see, let's go to the Edulastic item bank. Karen had mentioned that little videos pop up when you're trying to figure out what question to use. So I just wanted to show how that worked as well. There we go. Got into the assessment. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and go to the assessment library and create an assessment. ELA, let's do a skills check. Now that we know all about how to do them, we'll go here and author a new question. So if I don't know how to use, for example, the editing task, I can just click on this help button and the video pops up. And these are the videos, again, that Karen was talking about. Can everyone hear that? Okay. So this walks you through what it's good for and how to use it. And we don't watch the whole thing right now, but this will allow you to dive right in and create that question. So then when you click on it, you'll have a better idea of what you're doing. And I'll show you how that one works too. Oh wait, what was? Here we go. Editing task. So if you want to find editing task questions, you can just click on that and go here. Preview, and this is how the editing task works. There you go. Okay, are the Google Classroom folks familiar with how to sync Edulastic in Google Classroom? If anyone has any questions about that, you can go ahead and let us know. Or any questions following up, any questions to follow up after this webinar, you can just email me also at ileana@edulastic.com. Okay, I'm going to go back to video. So we have a question in the chat. I'm an instructional coach from Dorothy. When I create an assessment, how will I share it with teachers on my caseload? Okay, so if you are creating an assessment, so let's go back to, why don't we use this one let's use one of the ones that I've created. So I've created an assessment. Maybe this is the ELA assessment I've created, and I'm ready to publish it and share it with the teachers that I work with. So let's see, edit it. And then when I go to publish it, this is where you want to look at the share settings that are available to you. And on the share settings, I can choose to share it to my private library, which means that no one can see anything. This is just my personal library. I can do link share. This means that only I can see it and the people who I share the link with can see it. I can also share it to school library, which means anyone within my school, in this case Jefferson, can see it. If I add it to my district library, anyone across the district can use the assessment, and the whole Edulastic community means that it's public and available to any teachers. So we love when you share with the whole library. Sharing is caring. Sometimes people are using curriculum that they have licensed to only their school or district, and in that case, they're usually sharing it within their school or district to honor their license. If you're creating your own content, feel free to share it with the whole library, or link share if you really just want to share it within your PLN. Does that answer the question? Who asked that? Dorothy? Okay, yeah, she says. Great. All right, and Catherine was asking about matching Canvas and Edulastic. Leslie answered that in the chat. Is there anything else that anyone wants to see right now in the Edulastic screen? I'll link share this one. Save. So you just click save and then assign. Or I guess I don't really want to assign it right now, but I could assign it if I wanted to. For any questions for Karen or Christina, also, you can go ahead and enter those in the chat. We'll go back to our questions page. Or are there any questions from those who are dropping in on Facebook? Did we cover everyone's questions? If so, that's awesome. Hit all the points. Okay. All right, so let me just go back here. So if anyone has any follow-up questions, they can email me at ileana@edulastic.com. I'm happy to answer them. We're also going to email out the link to the recording of this webinar, which we'll post on YouTube as soon as it's processed. And I do encourage you all to connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, and YouTube. Definitely subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to stay updated to the latest tutorials or new features, because we usually will post updates on there that are very helpful in helping you make the most of Edulastic. So subscribe there if you do anything next. And yeah, look for that email from us with the recording. I want to say a big thank you again to our featured presenters, Karen Ford and Christina Acevedo. We really appreciate you joining us today and sharing all the wonderful information. It was a really great evening with lots of information. It's getting dark, so yeah, unless anyone has any other things to add, I want to say thanks so much for joining us tonight or later if you're joining if you're checking out the recording at another date. And please do stay connected. This is the last of our Teacher Talk webinars. So it's been a really great run. We've covered math, we've covered social studies, science, ELA. We've had 10 awesome teachers join in to share how they're using Edulastic, sharing their personal tips, their strategies, and it's just been really, really enriching. So big round of applause to everyone who's been a part of this, whether you've been presenting or asking really great questions throughout. It's been really enriching. I hope that you find this webinar helpful, and also if you have colleagues that are using Edulastic or interested in using Edulastic, I do encourage you to hop on a YouTube channel and find a relevant webinar and share that with them, because it's really nice to see how other teachers are using Edulastic and putting it into practice, and I think it really helps others visualize how digital assessment can help them reach their goals. So thank you, everyone. Have a good evening, and we're going to sign off.